All right. First and foremost, I'm gonna say all praises be to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem Rakah Kodash, and then I'm gonna say double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and shalom to the sincere elect teaching the truth and faith and sincerity. Quick topic I want to speak on is a point I mentioned at the camp. In terms of Esau being, a hypocrite. Esau being a hypocrite, a thief, and also a liar. And the point was on this point, on how here it is they paint a face of who sells drugs and drugs in general, right? As Jake, being the main distributors and suppliers of drugs, and how basically the face of Jake has always been painted in recent times, obviously with the crack epidemic. From that point even until now, the face of drug dealing is Jake. When historically speaking, these Edomites, man, especially over here, like in the UK, Great Britain, and even France and other nations, other Edomite nations, they built a lot of their wealth, of course, from Jake and slavery and stuff, but as well from straight up selling of drugs. But here it is, right? We get that label of drug dealers and this and that and this and that. We getting painted with that brush when this British Empire as we know it was made rich from drugs, and other things, of course. So I just wanted to give a few examples of that. But before we do, this is Revelation 12 and 10. And I heard a loud voice saying, "Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our power." Yeah, because the Lord is the power, right, of the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, starting off with his elect and the power of his anointed. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. And of course, man, that's what happens in terms of Esau. He's always slandering us, going back and forth. Hold on, these are supposed to be the righteous people, but they're doing this and they're doing that. When quite frankly, you set up a lot of Jake to be going off, because you obviously have the power now and rulership, power and rulership upon the earth. But Esau obviously doesn't judge righteously or establish the law which he claims to care about, which is why the scripture says, "Unto the wicked the Most High saying, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or taketh my covenant in thy mouth, since thou hatest instructions and cast the words of the Most High behind thee?" That is their spirit. But Esau is just a liar, man. He's Jacob this, Jacob that, when historically, you're a hypocrite, man. Esau gets to have that clean so-called slate, and he's just so righteous, and they've just never done anything. When historically and even currently speaking, you do nothing but bring evil upon the earth, and have brought nothing but evil upon the earth, right? You've taken peace from the earth, but then you try and act like all you do is bring peace, when that's just not the case. And again, to focus on this kind of topic, you've always painted Jake as drug dealers and this, that crime and knife crime and all this kind of shit, when historically You've done way worse and are still benefiting and flourishing off of those things. This is Job 20:4. Knowest thou not knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment, right? And Esau is a hypocrite, right? Right? Here is the Hebrew word hanap, right? It says, so that man, my voice is a bit messed up. It says hypocritical, godless, profane, hypocrite, right? So that's Esau, man. He's what I mean. He's a hypocrite, absolute hypocrite, and let's go into that information. So I asked chat, list all colonial powers that got rich from drugs. It says many colonial empires were wealthy through the production, taxation, and trade of narcotics, especially between the 16th and 20th centuries. The most significant examples include, what does it say there? Right? The United Kingdom, right? The United, what does it say? The United Kingdom, the British Empire, right? It says controlled large-scale opium production up in India, which obviously there's a lot of history over there as well, what they did in India and how many people, died from that fact. It says forced opium exports into China, which again, if you read, if you go and do the research about the opium wars, it's fucked up. They forced opium, basically, into China to purposely get their people hooked on drugs so that China would then trade with Great Britain. Because at that time, China was really rich and wealthy. And they would export, basically the Chinese exported a lot of goods back then too. In fact, anytime they would export goods, they would basically require basically everyone to pay them in silver. So at that time, China got rich, and Great Britain would import stuff like tea from China, but then we'll have to pay them in as silver, and Great Britain didn't like that. So they basically hatched a plan to purposely get the Chinese people hooked on drugs, and it got so bad that the Chinese Empire at the time, the leadership would have to actually try to beg, please, our people are dying, our people are hooked on drugs, it's ruining us. All right, to the point they don't even go as far as to pour out opium, into streams and rivers and ponds, because it was that bad. People was hooked on drugs and said it was ruining their people, and that only happened because Great Britain, right, couldn't stand the fact that China was rich and had more power, and influence. So they purposely got people hooked on drugs, right? And at the same time as people was dying from being hooked on those drugs, people up in India who should obviously, farm these things and such, they was dying too. That's their history. But then again, we get painted as a face of knife crime and drug dealing and this and that, when you historically benefited from drugs. It says forced opium exports into China leading to the first Opium War and the second Opium War, right? Which I believe, even in that trade, eventually, some uh, um, Americans also got like involved at the end, where they too was illegally importing in drugs into China too, to extract that wealth too. Even though the Chinese, right, back then, a lot of the wealthy businessmen back then would actually helped to build certain railway tracks and invest in Babylon when it was being built up during that time period. So you see, so Esau's a hypocrite. It says the opium trade helped finance imperial expansion and reduced Britain's silver deficit with China. You see, because basically the Chinese was basically accepting only to do trade in silver, and Great Britain after a while couldn't afford it. So they hatched a plan, got their people hooked on drugs, so that they was forced to trade with them. Opium revenues were a major part of colonial income in Bengal. Britain is widely considered the largest state-level drug profiteer of the 19th century. Netherlands, right? All fucking Edomites. Through the Dutch East India Company, the Dutch monopolized the opium trade in Southeast Asia, sold opium extensively in the Dutch East Indies, right? Modern Indonesia. Opium tax farming became a core revenue stream in the colonial Indonesia. French, see? The French colonial empire, right? It says Rand state controlled opium monopolies in French Indochina, right? Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Opium dens were licensed and taxed. Profits funded colonial administration and infrastructure. Spain, and then it goes, Spain, it says while more known for silver and sugar, Spain taxed cocoa, tobacco, in parts of Latin America. Indigenous cocoa use in the Andes was regulated and taxed by colonial authorities. Drug trade profits were smaller compared to the Britain or the Netherlands, but guess what? Still did. Portugal participated in early opium trade routes between India and China, less dominant than Britain, but involved narcotics circulation through its Asian colonies, Goa, I believe, and Macau. Obviously goes into Japan, but right now I'm focusing on fucking Esau, man. So it says key context: colonial drug profits often came through state monopolies, tax farming systems, false cultivation, and military enforcement of trade, e.g. the Opium Wars. In the 18th and 19th centuries, opium functions similarly to oil today, a geopolitical commodity tied to power and trade balance. You see? Again, now the face of these things is Jake, when historically that's all you've done. In fact, I ain't gonna read this whole article. In fact, I don't have access to, right? But it says colonial Britain and the $1 trillion drug trade, right? How the empire made trillions selling drugs. You see? But now they're like they're so great and so righteous, right? It says, can you believe it, the British Empire built $1 trillion drug trade and fought wars to protect it. It's a scale of operation that's hard to fathom. Most people think of Pablo Escobar when they hear drug kingpin. But the truth is, the biggest drug empire in history wasn't run by a cartel in Colombia. It was run by an empire, one with ships, soldiers, and palaces. At the top, it says the East India Company, supported by the Crown. Britain's addiction to tea and silver. In the 1800s, Britain loved Chinese tea, proper English obsession, but there was a problem. China didn't want British goods, only silver. So Britain's silver reserves started drying up fast. So this is what I was talking about. And to opium. To fix their trade deficit, the British East India Company started exporting opium in India to China. By 1839, Britain was exporting over 6,500 tons of opium per year to China. In today's market, the street value of opium per kg can hit $150,000, depending on purity. Multiply that by 6.5 million kg. That's nearly 1 trillion USD a year. Escobar's empire, tiny in comparison, earned about 22 billion per year. At its peak, Queen Victoria's empire, 1 trillion, 45 times bigger. When China said no, Britain said war. The Chinese king or government tried to stop the opium flood. They confiscated shipments and shut down trading posts. Britain responded with gunboats and wars. First opium war, second. I can't access this whole article, but you get the point. But then now, the face of drugs is Jake. When you've done nothing but, again, whether it's Britain, whether it's France, whether it's Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, you got rich off drugs, bro. But now, the face of that is Jake. So that's why Esau's a hypocrite. So I'm going to just read up some scriptures and go into that point further. So, right? So this is, again, I've already read this, but I'm going to read this again. Knowest thou not of this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite for a moment. And Esau's the ultimate hypocrite. He tries to, act so righteous, right? But then he's so wicked. When his wickedness get exposed, he gets upset at it. When it's like, bro, it's your sins, it's your wickedness, it's your dirty laundry. Like, they can't just handle them when the mirror is shown to them. That's what they can't handle when you show him that himself, like that his own mirror, man, which is his past, man, which is his history. Though his excellency mount to the heavens and his head reach onto the clouds, yeah, because he's so proud, man. And that, even as far as going up to space, but that's a reflection of his pride. Yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? And it's fitting. It's fitting that, you've conquered lands, you've conquered many people, you've been so proud, you've been the hammer of this whole earth, right? Starting off with Babylon, but Esau's a nation has just beat everyone down. And it's fitting that after all of that, coming against the people of the Lord and such, when you get taken down, that you shall be exterminated. You see? This is, I want to get John 10 and 10, right? And to just apply it to the point I'm talking about in terms of Esau. Alright? To just apply it. Right? The thief cometh not but for to steal, to kill, and destroy. I am come that they may have life, and they have life more abundantly. Again, this applied originally to the wicked scribes and Pharisees, but in the context of what I'm talking about, we're going to apply it onto Esau. He's nothing but a thief. He steals lands, he steals cultures, he steals history, he steals people. But then when you confront him or just mention what he's done, it's an issue. It's like, bro, why are you mad, bro? It's your problem, not mine. It's your history, not ours. And that's that's the spirit of Esau that takes no accountability for his actions. The same thing with Cain. You take no accountability, and then when it's mentioned, you get mad at it because you're a damn hypocrite, man. You see, straight up, man. That is the spirit. Yeah, I mean of Esau. All right, let's get Psalms 58 and 3. I'm gonna start from 1. Do you indeed speak righteousness, O congregation? Do you judge uprightly, O you sons of men? Yea, in heart you work wickedness. You weigh the violence of your hands in the earth. So you don't speak upright. All you work in your heart is wickedness. And then you, right, are the manufacturers of the violence and the death and the destruction that happens upon the earth. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they've been born, speaking lies. And Esau's the seed of the wicked. They speak nothing but lies. You are forgers of lies. Well, when this truth is spoken about, you get mad. Bro, come on, man. It's your history. It's you know what they say? It's my truth. Well, it's your truth. But you don't accept that truth. That you are the manufacturers of evil. Their poison is like the poison of a serpent. They're like death either which stoppeth the air. Alright? Let me get Psalms 140. Now this is Psalms 140, right? It says, deliver me, O Lord, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man, which imagine the mischiefs in their heart. Continually are they gathered together for war. Right? Continually you're gathered together for war. Right? That's Esau's spirit. Right? War in terms of, conquering nations and conquering peoples. War in terms of, imposing your policies against nations, and that if they don't comply, you then take them down or, subvert their nation completely and rule it and instill your puppet leaders. Again, even just on this example, the Opium War, you was mad that China didn't need you and you needed China. You was mad that they was trading your with you in tea, and in return they just wanted you to pay for them in silver, and they got rich. So what do? Let me get the people who are hooked on drugs, illegally import that shit in, get them hooked on drugs, so that you're not in debt to them with silver anymore. That's the devil. And it's not just the British Empire, it's also the Dutch. The Dutch ain't spoken about, enough for what they did. And there's a lot more. There's a lot more history. There's a lot more things that this devil's got away with. So he thinks. But guess what? The Lord, is exposing him. And it's only a matter of time before his empire and his kingdom and his rulership is taken down. Right? I'm going to end with this one. Up in Habakkuk. Alright, this is Habakkuk 2 and 6. It says, thou art filled with shameful glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful ruin shall be thy glory. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Shameful spirit upon that glory, man. Because all your wickedness, like all the wealth you've amassed, all the lies that you've told, right? All the achievements that you so-called have made, right? It's been exposed, and it's tainted with blood. It's tainted with shame, because you're exposed for the wickedness that you did and still do. So I just wanted to touch on that point, to show another example of the absolute hypocrisy of Esau. Here is which doesn't excuse these niggas on the blocks too, who do sell these things and do what they do. It isn't excusing them, but the point is, hey, I mean, how you gonna make them the face of everything when you did it? You did it and you still do. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say all praises be unto you. How about you, my Shah, Bashir, and Kakodash? Double honor to the apostles and elders, great millstones. And next time, I'm going to say shalom.